Welcome back to Triple Threat, and we have an exciting weekend of football just passed. We had the Bengals upset the Kansas City Chiefs. Must say, day one Bengals fan. Ignore the background. Ignore the background. I'm a day one Bengals fan. And we had the Rams beat the Niners. So let's start with the AFC Championship game. Give me your initial thoughts on that exciting game.
Well, you have a jersey. I have a shiesty mask. 1 second. But yeah, it was a really fun game to watch. I think we've been treated to some great playoff games, but
Couldn't have scripted
besides
it
the
better.
Bills game, that might have been my favorite. First of all, what a great game from both teams. Definitely hard fought, but I really just want to commend Joe Burrow in his first ever playoff season. He upset. Well, first of all, he beat the Raiders, upset Tennessee, and then comes in to Kansas City, fresh off of potentially their biggest recent win, and decides to upset them at home in front of 60 something thousand fans at Arrowhead. Just something that very few quarterbacks and very few offensive players have been able to do, perform at a high level at Arrowhead in the playoffs. And also the defense definitely turned it up, especially towards the end of the game. Not allowing them to score on the last drive, giving Bucker that field goal, and then the final game sealing pick or game winning pick.
My
So
boy
really
Von
just
Bell. My boy Von
on Bell,
Bell.
and I guess Eli Apple too.
No, no. You don't talk about Eli Apple. That's a whole other segment. We could have an hour-long conversation on Eli Apple, but
Well, he dropped it.
no one likes Eli Apple. Like
No,
I,
no one
I think
does.
the
Giants
Bengals players
fans
don't like
hate
him
him.
anymore.
Fans hate him.
I think the Bengals fans
Bengals
hate
fans
him.
hated him briefly. But yeah, just really great, really just great football. And I think that for Cincinnati, number one, this kind of increases their marketability as a team. This will become a free agent destination. Number two, these guys are really young, have a lot of room to grow together. And I think this offense, when you look at just the weapons that they have and not include the offensive line, so the skill position players and the quarterbacks, you're looking to me at a top three offense for the next 5 years.
I can see that. Now, I thought who I want to give credit for in this game. I mean, obviously, wearing a Joe Burrow jersey, I got to give Joe Burrow some credit. But the Bengals front office has done a great job revamping that defense from the worst in the league to a formidable defense that held the Chiefs to 0 points in over 2 quarters of action from the fifth minute in the second quarter to the last second of the fourth. Like,
Yeah,
and then
it's
let's
your
let's,
boy
let's, let's
Trey.
talk about their additions from the Saints. You have Von Bell and you have Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson has been a monster. He was third in sacks last year and was at 15 and a half this year too. I mean, like,
Yeah,
he's been a menace on in kind of sack in the Chiefs game. Was a force all game. Disrupted Mahomes. Has been greatly impactful. DJ Reader has been a force up front. I know he didn't play last season, but his impact in the run game. He's one of the best run defenders in the NFL. And
can't
has
forget about Jesse Bates.
I mean, he's been there. Jesse Bates has been a stud.
Yeah,
And then they drafted Logan Wilson in the third round from Wyoming. I mean, they've done a great job revamping that defense. They signed Cheeto Awuzie in free agency from the Cowboys. They've just overhauled that defense into a formidable front. And I just think when you give Joe Burrow a defense, he has not lost a win or go home game in his career. He won the UCF bowl game in his first season with LSU. SEC championship game, semifinal, final with LSU. And then he's got 3 playoff games. He's 7-0 in win or go home.
yeah.
You don't
And
mess with Joe.
if you just look at the guys that they've drafted these past few, or let's just look at 2021, for example. Obviously, we know the impact that Jamar Chase has had.
Man, imagine people like, dude, you have to take Penny Sewell. Joe Burrow is going to get murdered. He doesn't care. He doesn't care.
That's it. That's the man right there.
He didn't have an offensive line at LSU. He had Jamar Chase, and that worked.
Jackson Carman, so there to bolster up the line a little bit. Joseph Osai,
I like
um,
him.
don't know too much about him, but I've seen him on the field a few times. Cameron Sample, Tyler Shelvin, defensive tackle,
My boy.
another LSU
Run
boy,
front stuffer. That guy's a big
and then
dude.
Dante Smith and arguably my favorite pick out of everyone they've taken, Evan McPherson out of Florida, fifth round. I'm not the biggest guy when it comes to drafting kickers in the fifth round, but
I
I
think it
think
worked.
it's been worth it for sure.
I remember at the beginning of the season, he was pretty dreadful. It was like, God, man, Evan McPherson, he's making missing kicks left and right. Like the Packers game, he
But he
missed
was
like
like just
three.
like a trick shot guy.
Yeah, and then he came in and he proved me wrong, and he's been studied ever since. And then go back to previous year's draft: T. Higgins, Jonah Williams, Joe Mixon, they Michael Jordan. I mean, they've done a great job.
Joe
Um,
Burrow.
I even forgot to mention him. He
Pretty valuable.
he is just too good. We'll get into more in-depth analysis when we did our Super Bowl preview, but let's move on to the NFC Championship game. Initial thoughts on this one, because I hate both teams. I hate them both. Both are responsible for the Saints not being in the playoffs multiple years.
So one is responsible for the Falcons not making the Super Bowl like 9 years ago, and then the other I can tolerate. Actually, I like both teams. I I really do like Shanahan.
I do too.
Uh,
I just can't. What they did, not them.
yeah, definitely not. Just definitely not a great look for San Fran. I thought they had it all locked up, but it was kind of good to see LA come back from down instead of almost blowing another big lead to Tom Brady. So I think number one, really just Debo Samuel had an amazing game. Really showed that he is not only a top three receiver of the season, but in my opinion, a kind of a favorite for offensive player of the year for the next couple of years.
Okay, let's say not this year. He ain't touching it this year.
No, no. And then the other guy on the Rams, Cooper Cup, man, like I didn't really get to watch him too much in the regular season. I just kind of tracked his stats. Oh, this guy's number one. He's always been pretty decent, but didn't know he made a leap like this. But just seeing what he can do with his route running, with his speed, his burst, his agility, his ability to really just break down coverages is something else. And he was really on it, not only in the Bucks game, but this game too, making a lot of big high level plays. So it was a really fun offensive game to watch, especially from the receiver position. But do you think, I know we always talk about this when it comes to San Fran, but is this the last straw for Jimmy G?
I think it has to be. I mean, we saw Trey Lance come in for some sporadic action, and he grew his way into the game. And I think he's earned, like, you can't spend 3 first-round picks on a guy and just have him sit on the bench for Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, I remember at the beginning of the game, Jimmy Garoppolo had the biggest overload of George Kittle I've ever seen. The guy was wide open. No one's within 10 feet of him. And Kyle Shanahan's offense, it's not make or read. Kyle Shanahan will tell you the read. You're going to look at this guy. You're going to look at this guy. This guy's going to be wide open for nowhere to be within 30 yards of him. Like, he is like Evan McPherson type, just called, here's a 70-yard touchdown, go throw it. And Jimmy G just sometimes just doesn't hit like that. And I know Trey Lance's arms is probably worse than Jimmy G's, but you can't spend 3 first-round picks for him to sit on the bench. I mean, you just can't.
Yeah.
And you can't pay Jimmy G $27 million just to be a backup. So Jimmy G's
If
got
you look at if you
gotta
look at
go.
the situation for Trey Lance, it's pretty hard for him to fail compared to basically every other quarterback. Like he's not in Jacksonville where he has inherited basically a dumpster fire. Same thing with Wilson and the Jets. He has a top offensive coach, the best offensive lineman in the NFL,
Yeah.
not one, but two top three playmakers at their respective positions in Kittle and Samuel. Then you have an elite run game as well. It's for me, it's just pretty hard to see him kind of fail. And I think if he just does what he's instructed to, doesn't even have to take too many risks, he should be able to pull through. So I hope that San Fran has a little bit more faith in him next year because this is a very talented team. This is such a really well constructed roster, well coached roster as well. It would really suck to see them not make another Super Bowl.
Now, one thing I do want to talk about in this game is the Rams' defense because as poor as have they been in the run game, what they did was phenomenal against a run offense, which is virtually unstoppable. They held the team to 20 carries for 50 yards. I mean, this team isn't like a run stopping machine. You think of them as an elite pass rush: Von Miller, Robert Quinn, Aaron Donald, but 0 sacks and had a great run defense. It was a really weird change of script for them, and I think that's something that's interesting going into the Super Bowl when you have a team like the Bengals, which are a lot more two-dimensional. Is what defense do we get? Do we get the pass rushing minutes that we saw in the Tampa Bay game, or do we get the run stopping minutes that we saw last week? It's this polarity defense, and it's hard to put a finger on. It just these personalities they have are so hit or miss, and I think it could be such a wide open outcome for the Super Bowl because of that. What's going to show up? The Jekyll and Hyde of the Rams defense. And obviously you got to give Raheem Morris some credit. He's done a good job filling in, making these personalities work somehow. I mean, you put in 2 DP Defensive Players of the Year and Jalen Ramsey, and add on top of that Robert Quinn on the same defense. I mean, you got to have something going on. But
Yeah.
credit for them. Credit to Eric Weddle. I mean, dude's playing
Yeah.
80 snaps out there with 2 years out of retirement. But
Very just high IQ, intelligent, just a really, really good guy to have in your locker room as well. So, Cincy has not made the Super Bowl since they lost to San Fran, and that's why I was that's why I wanted San Fran to win a little bit, get that infamous rematch. But if you're looking at both teams, I think to me, the Rams definitely look like a better on paper roster. Not only do you have the number 1 wide receiver this season.
hey, let's not go into Super Bowl preview yet. That's another topic. Hey, don't
Okay. I'm giving a very brief intro.
Teaser.
I think offensively, it's definitely a little bit more even. And I think defensively, I feel like production-wise, it's more even. On paper, I see the Rams as a better team. But we'll have to wait and see some full analysis. But any closing thoughts?
I just want to briefly touch on what's next for the teams that lost because they don't get their credit enough. I mean, top 14 of the NFL, pretty great. The Chiefs scored 0 points for 30 minutes of football. I mean, unexcusable for an offense that powerful. They could not call plays after their scripted set after the first 15 plays. I'm not fully versed of who's calling plays for the first 15 versus after that. Is it Bieniemy? Is it Reed? I think that's a real genuine question going into the future. What's happening with Bieniemy? But all in all, you have a great team. You lost a game. There's not much they can do with it retrospectively. They had a solid defensive game. Bengals only scored 27. They just didn't have enough on the offensive end. And I think as much as it's hard to say, they've got to go back, establish the run game. You see Yates more, and I mean the weapons they can't add up more. They got a great offensive line. They got to use more in the run game. Really make that defense bite because you have 2 high safeties. You limit the downfield threat. Mahomes if the patience is gonna run out. You saw him that 3rd down play in the red zone. Took a 20-yard sack. The patience is he's looking for the big play all the time. So there's a little bit of a change in perspective there. And for the Niners, I think you got to make a quarterback change because your team's great. You have 2 great receivers, great tight end, great running game, great offensive line. You have all the pieces for a quarterback to succeed. You got to see what you have before you make a decision. So
Definitely. I think both teams especially Kansas City, will be fired up next year and will be in contention